Wyoming Territory, November of 1887. The mountains stand purple against the last of the afternoon sun. Enormous, ancient, indifferent. Below them, a small wooden station, a single track cutting through the snow. A train pulling away. Move closer. The platform, empty now, except for one figure. A young woman, 24 years old, a leather suitcase at her feet, a cameo brooch at her throat, 8 months of letters in her hands tied with a blue ribbon. Closer, her face, pale, composed, the face of a woman who has crossed half a country on the promise of a man she has never met. The station master has just spoken. 4 words she cannot yet make her mind hold. Somewhere on that mountain, 3 brothers are hitching a wagon. They do not know she exists. And somewhere in this county, another man is smiling. Because everything is going exactly according to his plan. She does not know yet, but she is about to. The train pulled away from Willow Bend Station at 4 minutes past 4. Anwin Lamont watched it go. The whistle cut through the November air, sharp, final, like a door closing in another room. She stood on the platform with her leather suitcase at her feet. 24 years old, $3.60 in the pocket of her traveling coat, a cameo brooch at her throat, and a hope so carefully folded inside her chest that she was afraid to breathe too deep, because breathing too deep might crack it. The other passengers had already gone. A woman with 2 small boys had been swept up by a broad-shouldered man in a sheepskin coat. An older couple had been met by a wagon and a girl who called them Grandma and Grandpa. A traveling salesman had tipped his hat at the station master and walked off toward the boarding house. And Anwin stood. She looked left. Empty road. She looked right. Empty road. She looked at the little wooden bench beside her. Then she looked at the sky. The sky in Wyoming was a color she did not have a word for. Bigger than any sky she had ever seen in Boston. It made her feel small. Not in a bad way. In the way a person feels small at the edge of the ocean. Or standing at the back of a cathedral. Except cathedrals had priests. And this platform had no one. She waited 10 minutes, then 15, then 20. The station master came out to sweep the boards. He was a thin man with wire spectacles and a mustache the color of dry hay. He glanced at her. He did not stop sweeping. She lifted her chin. "Excuse me, sir." He paused. "Ma'am, I'm expecting to be met." "By whom, ma'am?" She hesitated, because the name felt strange to say out loud. She had written it 100 times in her own hand. She had whispered it at night in the boarding house room in Boston, the way a girl whispers the name of the man she is going to marry, softly, like a promise. But she had never said it out loud to a stranger. "By Mr. Harrow Blackwell." The broom stopped moving. The station master looked at her the way a doctor looks at a patient he is about to give bad news. "Ma'am?" "Yes." "Would you sit down a moment?" She did not sit down, because sitting down would be admitting that something was wrong. And nothing was wrong. Nothing could be wrong. She had written to Harrow Blackwell for 8 months. She had 8 months of letters folded into a bundle at the bottom of her suitcase, tied with a blue ribbon. 8 months of promises about the ranch, the mountain, the little house he was going to build for her. 8 months of Dear Miss Lamont, that became Dear Anwin, that became My Anwin, that became Yours faithfully Harrow. 8 months. A train ticket paid for. A future arranged. Nothing could be wrong. "Ma'am." The station master set his broom against the wall. "I don't know how to tell you this anyway but plain." She felt the cold slide up her spine before he said it. Mr. Blackwell was married 3 weeks ago. The world did not tilt. That was the strange part. She had always heard that when a person receives terrible news, the world tilts, the floor moves, the ears ring, but the platform stayed flat, the sky stayed big. And Anwin Lamont stayed exactly where she was standing, very still, with her hands folded in front of her stomach, and her chin lifted the way her mother had taught her to lift it in church. "I'm sorry," she said it politely, as if he had told her the train was delayed. I don't believe I heard you correctly. Ma'am, I said, I heard the words. I just don't believe them. The station master looked away. Because it is hard to look at a young woman when you have just told her that the man she crossed half a country to marry has married somebody else. There must be a mistake, she said. No mistake, ma'am. I have letters. I have a train ticket. He arranged the ticket himself. Ma'am, I don't know anything about your letters, but Mr. Blackwell married the Hendrickson widow on the 28th of October. Everybody in the county was at the wedding. I was at the wedding. Anwen's mouth opened, then it closed, because she could not think of a single word that would fit inside the shape of what had just happened. Would you like some water, ma'am? No. Would you like to sit? No. Ma'am, it's getting cold. She looked at him. She looked at his wire spectacles and his hay-colored mustache and his sweeping broom that had already gone back to sweeping. Because life apparently kept going, even when a young woman's life had just stopped in the middle of a Wyoming platform. Sir, ma'am, is there a boarding house? There is. $2 a night. Is there a stagecoach back east? Twice a week, Tuesday and Friday. $14 to Cheyenne. 12 more to the Missouri line. She did the arithmetic in her head. She had $3.60, which was not 14, which was not 2, which was not anything at all. She turned her face toward the mountains. They were purple in the late light, purple and enormous. They looked like they had been standing there since the beginning of the world and would still be standing there long after every heart in it had broken. She did not cry. She simply sat down on the bench, slowly, like a woman lowering herself into cold water. The station master watched her sit. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He picked up his broom and went back inside. Because there are some kinds of pain that a stranger does not have the right to interrupt. The snow began at 5 o'clock, small at first, almost hesitant. Little flakes that did not seem to know whether they were falling or floating. They landed on Anwen's sleeve and stayed there for a moment before disappearing into the wool. She watched them. She thought, this is snow in Wyoming. She thought, this is my first snow in Wyoming. She thought, this is the last snow I will ever see in Wyoming, because I do not know how I will still be here by morning. And she thought about her sister. Her sister was 9 years old. Her name was Piety. She was in Boston. She was living with an aunt who was not unkind, but who had 6 children of her own in a small kitchen. Anwen had written to her 3 days ago from the train. Dear Piety, by the time you read this, I will be in Wyoming. Mr. Blackwell has promised that as soon as we are married and settled, he will send for you. You will have a room of your own. You will have a window that faces the mountains. You will have a big sister who cooks your breakfast every morning and reads to you every night. I love you more than the sky. She had signed it, your Anwen. She thought about that letter. She thought about her 9-year-old sister opening it in a cramped Boston kitchen. She put her face in her gloved hands. She did not sob. She had never been a sobbing kind of woman. Her mother had died when she was 15. Her father had died when she was 20. She had learned young that grief, if you let it get loud, only made other people uncomfortable. So she had learned to keep it quiet. She kept it quiet now. Tears ran down her face. Slow. Warm at first. Then cold when the wind caught them. She thought of her mother's voice. Anwen. Chin up. God does not close a door without opening a window somewhere. She looked around the empty platform. She did not see a window. She did not hear them arrive. That was the first thing she remembered afterward. She did not hear the horses. She did not hear the boots on the boards. She only heard the voice, low, steady, careful. Ma'am, she lifted her face. There were 3 of them, 3 men, standing at the far end of the platform, hats in their hands, the way men stand in church. The one in the middle was the tallest, broad in the shoulders, a dark beard trimmed close, gray eyes that caught the last of the afternoon light. He held his hat by the brim with both hands, like a boy at a first communion. The one to his left was shorter, leaner, Dark hair long enough to touch his collar. A quicker face. The kind of face that laughed easily, though he was not laughing now. The one to the right was the youngest, fair-haired, softer around the jaw. He held his hat against his chest, and he was looking at her the way a person looks at a wounded bird. The tallest man took one step forward. Then he stopped. "Ma'am, my name is Ezra Redmond. These are my brothers, Bowen, Jasper." She said nothing. Because what does a woman say? On a bench, in the snow, when three strangers she has never seen appear like something out of a storybook. Her mother might have told her a long time ago. "We come down from the mountain on Wednesdays, for supplies." He said it slowly, like a man trying not to spook a horse. "The station master's wife. She saw you. She sent her boy to find us at the feed store." She still said nothing. "Ma'am, it's fixing to snow all night." The wind moved her hair against her cheek. She felt a strand of it stick to the wet on her face. She did not lift her hand to move it. The middle brother Bowen took a step forward. His voice was warmer than his brother's. It had a little bit of music in it, like a man used to singing. "Miss." "Yes." "Do you have somewhere to go tonight?" "No." She surprised herself saying it that plain, because a proper woman does not tell three strange men that she has nowhere to go. But Anwen Lamont was too tired to be proper. She was too cold. She was too erased. Ezra Redmond nodded once, as if her answer had confirmed something he already suspected. He walked forward slowly. He did not reach for her. He did not reach for her suitcase. He took the heavy sheepskin coat from his own shoulders and folded it once, and he laid it across her shoulders the way a man drapes a blanket over a sleeping child. His hands did not touch her. That was the thing she noticed later. His hands did not touch her. "It's warm," he said. "It'll do till the wagon." Then he stepped back. "Ma'am, our cabin is 4 miles up the mountain. There's a spare room. It has a door with a lock. If you'll allow it, we'll take you there tonight. And in the morning, we'll bring you back to town so you can send whatever wires you need to send and find whatever help you need to find." He paused. "You don't have to answer me now, but if you sit here another hour, ma'am, you will freeze." Anwen looked up at him. His eyes were gray. Not the cold kind of gray, the kind of gray a mountain is at dusk, the kind that has weather in it. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "My name is Anwen Lamont." He nodded. "Miss Lamont." He picked up her suitcase. He carried it toward the wagon. The youngest brother Jasper held out his hand, not to touch her, just to help her stand. She looked at his hand. She thought, "This is the first hand offered to me in this territory." She took it. The wagon smelled of hay and wood smoke and something clean she could not name. She sat between Bowen and Jasper. Ezra drove. The two horses were big and patient and did not seem to mind the snow. Nobody spoke for the first mile. Anwen kept her eyes on the road. The road climbed and climbed and climbed. The trees thickened. The snow got heavier. She could see the flakes now in the lantern light, spinning like small white moths against the dark. Bowen was the first to speak. "Miss Lamont." "Yes." "Are you hungry?" She had not eaten since Cheyenne, 20 hours ago, a biscuit and a cup of cold tea. "No." "Are you sure?" "I am." Because Jasper made bread this morning, and Ezra shot a rabbit day before yesterday. And there is stew on the stove that has been going since noon. And if you say you are not hungry, we will still put a bowl in front of you, and you can decide when you sit down. She almost smiled. She had not thought her mouth was capable of a smile that day, but something in the way he said it, simple, practical, as if there was no version of the evening in which she did not eat. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "I am also a very good cook," Bowen said. "I make it a point to say so, because if I don't say so, my brothers will not." "That's because it isn't true," Jasper said quietly. Behind her, almost under his breath, "You will not survive this ride, little brother." Anwen did smile then, just at the corner of her mouth. It hurt to smile, but it hurt in a good way, like blood coming back into a foot that had gone to sleep. The cabin appeared through the trees at 8 o'clock. She had been prepared for a shack. She had been prepared for a rough one-room building with a tin roof and a dirt floor. She had not been prepared for what actually stood at the top of the mountain road. It was a real house, timber and stone, 2 stories, a wide front porch with a rocking chair, a pair of dogs that came running from the barn tails going, but stopped at Ezra's whistle and sat. A curl of wood smoke rose from the chimney. Light glowed in the front windows. Anwen stared at it. She thought, this is the kind of house I dreamed about in Boston. She thought, this is the kind of house I was going to have with Harrow Blackwell. She thought, I am not going to think that thought again tonight. Ezra helped her down from the wagon. His hand held hers only long enough to steady her feet on the ground, and then he let go. He picked up her suitcase. He carried it up the steps. Bowen opened the door. Warmth spilled out. The smell of stew, the smell of bread, the smell of wood smoke, and something else she almost recognized. Beeswax, maybe, or lavender. She stepped inside. The main room had a big stone hearth, a long wooden table, a rocking chair near the fire, a shelf of books that made her breath catch. Because there were more books on that shelf than she had seen in most Boston homes. There was a small painting above the hearth, a woman in a yellow dress, standing in a field of wildflowers, smiling. Anwen did not ask. She would ask later, but not tonight. Miss Lamont, she turned. Ezra was standing beside a door at the back of the main room. He had opened it. The room inside was small, a narrow bed, a dresser, a rag rug on the floor, a window that faced the mountain. This is the spare room. Thank you. The door has a latch, but the latch is loose. I noticed it last spring. I did not fix it because I did not have a reason. He looked at her. I have a reason now. If you'll wait 10 minutes, I will fix it before you sleep. She did not know what to say. Because in all her 24 years, no man had ever offered to install a lock on a door for the purpose of making her feel safe from him. Yes, she said. Please. He nodded. He went to fetch his tools. He worked in silence. He knelt on the floor of the spare room. He unscrewed the old latch. He installed a new one, sturdier, iron. He tested it 3 times to make sure it held. He showed her how it slid. He showed her how to lift it. Then he stood up. He handed her a small brass key. He said, this is yours. That was all. He did not say, you can trust me. He did not say, I would never. He did not say, you have nothing to fear. He just gave her the key. And in giving her the key, he said all of those things. He left the room. He closed the door behind him. Anwen stood in the middle of the spare room. She held the key in her palm. She looked at it. She looked at the door. She looked at the window that faced the mountain, where the snow was coming down harder now, and the pines outside were beginning to whiten in the dark. She sat down on the edge of the bed. She did not lock the door, because she wanted to, but not yet. She was tired. She was so tired. Supper was quiet. They gave her a bowl of stew. They gave her a wedge of dark bread with butter. They gave her a tin cup of hot coffee, black, sweet with a little honey stirred in. She ate slowly. She had thought she would not be able to eat. Then she took the first bite, and she realized she was starving. She ate 2 bowls. Bowen watched her out of the corner of his eye and smiled at the second bowl, but did not say anything about it. Jasper, the youngest, sat across the table and did not eat much. He kept looking at her, and then looking at his plate, and then looking at her again, as if he wanted to say something and did not know how. Ezra sat at the head of the table. He said before they began, we say a blessing here. She nodded. He bowed his head. Lord, thank you for the meat and the bread. Thank you for the fire and the roof. Thank you for the traveler at our table. Bless her tonight. Guide us all tomorrow. Amen. The brothers said amen. Anwen said amen. Her voice broke a little on the word. She hoped nobody noticed. She was fairly sure all three of them did. None of them said anything about it. After supper, Bowen brought out a violin. He did not announce it. He simply took it down from a peg near the fireplace, tuned it briefly, and began to play. He played something slow, not a song she knew, but it sounded like a song her mother might have hummed while stirring soup. It had a heart in it, and a little sorrow, and a little sweetness. Anwen closed her eyes. She had not been so still in a long time. She had been running for months, running toward Harrow Blackwell, running toward a future, running toward a room where her little sister could have a window that faced the mountains. Now she was not running. She was simply sitting in a warm room on the edge of a rocking chair with three strange men and a fire and the sound of a violin. She did not cry. She had cried enough for one day. But her chest loosened. That was the best word she could think of. Her chest loosened. Because she had walked into that cabin 4 hours ago carrying something in her chest that felt like an iron ring. And in the space of a bowl of stew and a piece of bread and a song without words, the iron ring had begun quietly to open its hinge. Jasper read aloud from the Bible before bed. That was apparently their custom. He sat by the fire. He held the book open on his knee. He read in a soft voice that had a slight tremble in it, as if he was aware more than the others that a stranger was listening. He read from the book of Ruth. And Ruth said, "Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest I will go, and where thou lodgest I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God." Anwen sat in the rocking chair. The fire warmed her face. She listened, and she thought about her mother, who had read her that same passage on the last night of her life, sitting up in a Boston bed with a shawl around her thin shoulders and a candle on the nightstand. "Where thou goest, I will go." Anwen had not remembered that passage in years. She had not remembered her mother's voice reading it in years. But she heard it now, not in Jasper's voice, in her mother's, coming out from underneath his, layered on top of it. Two voices. One young man in Wyoming, one dead woman in Boston, reading the same words. She lowered her face. She let 2 tears fall. Nobody said anything. But when Jasper closed the book, he set it down carefully on the table. He said, "That was my mother's favorite passage." "It was mine also," Anwen said. "I mean, it was my mother's." Jasper looked up. His eyes met hers across the room. Something passed between them that she could not name. Not romance. Not yet. Something else. Something older than romance. Recognition. "Miss Lamont," Ezra said quietly, "you've had a long day. There is water in the pitcher in your room. The washstand is by the window. If you need anything in the night, you can knock at any door in this house." She nodded. She stood. She said, "Thank you." She said it 3 times because she did not know how to say it once. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Ezra Redmond did not look at her. He looked at the fire. "You are welcome under this roof, Miss Lamont." She locked the door. She stood with her back against it. She looked at the small room, the narrow bed, the dresser with the cracked mirror, the washstand with the pitcher of clean water, and the folded cloth beside it. She was in a stranger's house, on a mountain, in a territory she had never seen. Her chest should have been racing. Her chest was not racing. Her chest was quiet. She sat down at the dresser. She looked at her face in the cracked mirror. She hardly recognized it. It was thinner than she remembered, older. Her eyes were red at the edges. Her cheeks were windburned. She looked, she thought, like a woman who had been through something. She looked like her mother. That thought startled her. She had not looked like her mother before, but she did now. She opened the suitcase because she needed to find her nightdress, her hairbrush, the small tin cup she carried her tooth powder in. She lifted the folded clothes carefully. At the bottom of the suitcase was the bundle of letters, months of letters, tied with a blue ribbon. She stared at them. She was not going to read them tonight. She was not. She untied the ribbon. She hated herself a little for untying the ribbon. She unfolded the top letter, the most recent one, the one that had said, "Come now, my Anwin. The house is ready. The wedding will be a small one, but it will be the beginning of everything. Yours faithfully, Harrow." She looked at the handwriting. Careful, sloped, a little decorative on the capital letters. A gentle hand, a patient hand. She thought, this is the hand of a good man. Then she remembered something. She had in her small carrying purse the train ticket, and with the train ticket a small card signed by Blackwell himself, that the station agent in Cheyenne had glanced at and returned to her when she boarded. She had not looked at that card in weeks. She reached into her purse. She took it out. She unfolded it. Passage for Miss Anwin Lamont, 1 Cheyenne to Willow Bend, paid in full. H. Blackwell. The signature was at the bottom. She looked at the signature. Then she looked at the letter. Then she looked at the signature again. The handwriting was not the same. She sat down on the edge of the bed. She spread the 2 pages side by side on her lap. The letter was written in a careful, sloping hand with decorative capitals. The signature on the train card was a hard, cramped, businesslike hand. All angles, no decoration. The H was drawn like a fence post. The B was drawn like a hatchet. They had not been written by the same person. She stared at the 2 pages. She stared for a long time. Her mind moved slowly. She had been through too much in one day. But slowly, she began to understand. Somebody had written those letters for Harrow Blackwell, and it had not been Harrow Blackwell. She sat there with her hand pressed to her mouth, and she thought, there is another man in this story I have not yet met. And she thought, I do not know if he was helping Harrow Blackwell fool me, or if he was in some way I do not yet understand writing to me himself. And she thought, either way, I want to look him in the face. She did not sleep well, but she slept, which was more than she had thought possible. She dreamed of her mother. She dreamed of a small kitchen in Boston, and a woman with tired hands rolling out biscuit dough, and a voice saying, "Chin up, Anwin. God does not close a door without opening a window somewhere." In the dream, her mother looked up from the biscuit dough. She looked past Anwin's shoulder. She smiled. "There. Do you see it?" Anwin turned in the dream. She saw a window. The window looked out on a mountain. The mountain was covered in snow, and in the window, resting on the sill, was a small brass key. She woke at first light. The room was cold. The pitcher of water on the washstand had a thin skin of ice on top. She sat up. She wrapped the quilt around her shoulders. She looked at the small brass key on the dresser. She thought, I am still here. She thought, that is enough for now. She washed her face in the cold water. She dressed carefully. She combed her hair. She pinned it up at the nape of her neck the way her mother had taught her. She opened the door of the little room. The house was quiet. Not empty quiet, full quiet. The kind of quiet that meant somebody had already been up for hours and was moving carefully so as not to wake her. She stepped out into the main room. Ezra was at the stove. He had a coffee pot in one hand and a wooden spoon in the other. He was making something in a cast iron pan. It smelled like potatoes and onions and salt pork. He heard her step and turned. He said, "Good morning, Miss Lamont." He said it as if she had lived there all her life. She said, "Good morning, Mr. Redmond." She said it as if she had too. She sat at the table. He put a plate in front of her. He did not ask her how she had slept. He simply put the plate down. He said, "There is a woman in town who has been asking about you." Anwin lifted her head. "About me?" "Mrs. Whitaker runs the dressmaker's shop. Her husband was a friend of our father's before he passed. She heard from the station master's wife that a young woman had come off the train yesterday and been left alone. She sent word up the mountain this morning. She would like you to come and see her." He set his own plate down and sat across from her. "You do not have to go, of course, but if you like, I will drive you into town after breakfast." Anwin thought about that. She thought, I do not know this woman. I do not know any of these people. I do not know if this is a kindness or a curiosity. Then she thought, yesterday I met three strange men who took off their hats and gave me a coat and a lock and a bowl of stew. Perhaps kindness is a thing that comes in threes in this territory, or in fours. Yes, she said. I would like to go. He nodded. After breakfast, then. The town of Willow Bend was small. One main street, a bank, a general store, a feed store, a church with a white steeple, a schoolhouse, a dressmaker's shop with red curtains in the window. The dressmaker's shop had a hand-painted sign above the door. M. Whitaker. Fine sewing. Alterations. Wedding and mourning. Ezra tied the wagon to the post outside. He said, I'll wait here. He said it in a way that meant he would wait as long as she needed him to wait, and he would not press, and he would not follow her in. Anwen stepped down. She smoothed her skirt. She lifted her chin. She walked to the door. She pushed it open. The little bell above the door rang. The shop smelled of cotton and lavender and cedar and something old and warm and safe. A woman was standing behind the counter. She was 65 if she was a day. Silver hair pinned in a neat bun, small round spectacles, a dress the color of a robin's egg, a face full of lines, not the tired kind of lines, the other kind. The kind a face gets when a person has laughed and grieved and prayed and forgiven for a long, long time. The woman looked up. She saw Anwen, and she stopped. She simply stopped. She set down the pincushion she was holding. She took off her spectacles. She looked at Anwen as if Anwen were somebody she had been expecting for a very long time. She walked out from behind the counter. She crossed the floor. She took Anwen's hands in hers. Her hands were warm. They were very warm. She looked into Anwen's face. Her eyes filled slowly with tears. She said, "Oh, child, you don't have to say anything, honey. I know what happened at that station. The whole town knows what happened at that station." Anwen's chin trembled. She had been holding it up all morning. She had been holding it up since 4 o'clock the previous afternoon, and now standing in a little shop that smelled of cedar and lavender in front of a woman she had never seen in her life, she felt it slip, just for a second. Mercy Whitaker did not let go of her hands. She said softly, "I have been waiting for somebody like you to come to this town for a long time, daughter." Anwen stared at her. "You've been—" "I don't mean you specifically, honey. I didn't know your name. I didn't know your face. But I knew there would be a girl. And I knew when she came, she would come in the door of my shop, and I would know her when I saw her." She pressed Anwen's hands. "And here you are." She looked over Anwen's shoulder through the window at the wagon out front, at the tall man in the sheepskin coat sitting patiently on the driver's bench. "And you came in the company of Ezra Redmond." She turned back to Anwen. Her eyes softened even further. "Child, I want you to sit down. I am going to make you a cup of tea, and I am going to tell you a few things about this town that you are going to need to know." She led Anwen to a small chair by the stove. She poured the tea. Outside, the snow began to fall again. Slow at first, almost hesitant. And in the little dressmaker's shop in the town of Willow Bend in the Wyoming Territory, in November of 1887, a young woman of 24 years who had been erased from her own life the day before sat down across from a woman of 65 with silver hair and warm hands, and she began very quietly to be found. Mercy Whitaker poured the tea slow. She had a way about her, the way old women have when they have decided a thing must not be rushed, each movement small, each movement certain, as if the pouring of tea was itself a kind of prayer. Anwen watched her. She had not been looked after by an older woman since her mother died. 9 years. 9 years without a hand pouring tea into a cup and pushing it across a table toward her. She had not known she was hungry for it. Until now. Until she was. Mercy pushed the cup across. "Drink. Ma'am, I drink first. Talk second." Anwen drank. The tea was strong, sweet. There was honey in it, and something else, a little smoke, a little clove. It went down like something her body had been waiting for. Mercy watched her drink. She did not smile, but her face softened. In the way faces soften when they see somebody take medicine that is doing them good. Now, yes, ma'am. Tell me what he wrote to you. Anwin blinked. Ma'am, Harrow Blackwell, tell me what he wrote to you in the letters before you came. He wrote that he had a ranch and that he was lonely and that he wanted a wife and a family, and he wrote about the mountains. He said the mountains here were the kind of thing a person had to see with their own eyes before they could believe them. He said he wanted somebody to see them beside him. Her voice caught on the last line because it was the line she had read most. The line she had folded her heart around. Mercy Whitaker nodded once. Uh-huh. Ma'am, that is not Harrow Blackwell. I, child, I have known Harrow Blackwell for 31 years. I sewed his mother's burial dress. I know the way that man speaks, and the way he speaks is not the way that letter speaks. Anwin stared at her. Then who? That is exactly the question. Mercy set down her own cup. She leaned forward across the little table, her hands folded on the wood between them. Honey, I want you to listen to me very carefully, because what I am about to tell you is going to sound like something out of a penny novel. And I need you to understand it is not. It is the truth of this county, and you are standing in the middle of it, whether you meant to or not. Anwin nodded. She could not have spoken if she had wanted to. Mercy Whitaker began at the beginning. There is a railroad company out of Denver. They have been surveying a spur line through the Wind River Valley for going on 3 years. That line, if it comes through, will make land in this county worth 3 times what it is today. Maybe more. She paused. Harrow Blackwell knows this. He has known it longer than most. And for the last 2 years, quietly, through hidden names and hidden companies, he has been buying up land in this valley. Cheap. From families who did not know why the bank was suddenly calling in their notes, or why the county assessor had suddenly decided their land was worth half what it was the year before. She paused again. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Anwin understood. She was slow with tiredness and slow with grief, but she was not slow with numbers. He is squeezing them out. He is. And then buying up their land at auction. For pennies, yes. How many families? That I know of 7. That the town whispers about, but does not say out loud 4 more. Anwin set the teacup down. Her hands were steadier than she had expected. And Ezra Redmond. Mercy looked at her over the little wire spectacles. Yes, child. Ezra Redmond, too. Ezra Redmond most of all, because the Redmond place sits at the exact head of the valley where that railroad spur wants to run. Without the Redmond place, the spur line does not come through. With it, it does. She reached across the table. She put her warm hand on top of Anwin's cold one. So Harrow Blackwell has been squeezing that boy for 18 months. Feed suppliers who suddenly cannot fill orders. Bank clerks who suddenly cannot process a payment. Little troubles. The kind you cannot point at and say for sure. But little troubles in a row on a ranch that is only just holding on add up to a mortgage that a man cannot pay. She squeezed. And now, honey, now. Mercy's voice went quieter. Now you have arrived. Anwin did not follow. Not right away. Ma'am, think, child. Think. I don't. Why would a man like Harrow Blackwell send for a young woman all the way from Boston and write to her for 8 months and send her a train ticket and then marry another woman 3 weeks before her arrival? I don't know. Yes, you do. Yes, you do, honey. Think. Anwin thought. She thought about the polite smile at the platform. She thought about Blackwell's imagined face. She had never seen a photograph. She had built it from the letters. She thought about the arithmetic of it. A young woman arriving at a Wyoming station, left there, in the snow. She thought a young woman arriving at a Wyoming station and being left there in the snow is a scandal. She thought a scandal in a county this small sticks to whoever picks the young woman up off the platform. She thought, and whoever picks her up off the platform has now a stain on his name. Her hand went to her mouth. Mercy nodded slowly. There it is. He knew somebody would take me in. He knew somebody would have to, because you were not going to sit on that bench and freeze. This is not that kind of town. And whoever took me in, yes, would be linked to me. Yes. And you are the young woman a wealthy man discarded, and a young man opened his door to, and the whole county now has a story to tell about him. Anwin stared at her. That is not fair. No, honey, it is not fair. He used me. He did. He never planned to marry me. No, honey, he did not. Anwin felt something inside her chest, something warm, something with an edge on it. She had not felt it in a long time. It took her a moment to name it. It was anger. It was clean, hot, useful anger. She had not been angry in years. She had been sad. She had been tired. She had been afraid. She had been dutiful. But she had not been angry. She was angry now. She set both hands flat on the table. Mrs. Whitaker. Yes, child. I would like your help. Honey, that is why I opened the door this morning. The wagon ride back up the mountain was quiet. Anwin sat next to Ezra Redmond. She did not speak for the first mile. She was gathering, sorting, placing. Ezra did not press her. He was a man she was learning who did not press. He drove. He watched the road. He let her think. Halfway up the mountain, she said, Mr. Redmond, ma'am, I would like to work for you. He turned his head, slowly. Ma'am, not as a favor, not as an act of charity. As work, I can keep books. I can order supplies. I can write letters. I can manage accounts. My father was a poor businessman. I learned from watching him where every mistake was going to be. If you will have me, I would like to keep the books for your ranch. He did not answer for a moment. Then he said, I do not have money to pay a bookkeeper, Miss Lamont. I know. Ma'am, I have seen the state of your porch, and the state of your fences, and the state of the horse tack. I have not seen your ledgers, but I do not have to. I can tell you what I will find when I open them. And what will you find? I will find that you are losing money in 3 places at once and do not know it. And I will find those 3 places, and I will fix them. And when I fix them, you can pay me back out of what I have saved you, and not a penny before. She looked at him. She said, yes or no, Mr. Redmond. He was silent for a long moment. He watched the road. Then very quietly he said, yes, Miss Lamont. That was all. But something in the way he said it, something in the shape of that one small word. Yes. She had the strange feeling that it was the first yes he had said to a woman in 6 years. She opened the books that night. She sat at the long wooden table in the main room. She had asked Ezra for every ledger, every receipt, every scrap of paper he had. He brought them out of a drawer in an old pine desk. There was a lot of paper. There was very little order. Bowen watched from the fireplace. You are certain, Miss Lamont, that you would like to spend your evening with our paper? I am certain, because I would be happy to play a lively tune instead. Play the lively tune, Bowen. I can add and listen at the same time. Can you? Try me. He laughed. He picked up the violin. He played something quick and bright. A jig, a dance, a tune with a wink in it. Anwin added columns. Ezra sat across from her. He did not speak. He watched her work, his large hands folded on the table, his face composed. He looked, she thought, like a man who had not seen a woman at his table doing something ordinary and useful in a very long time. He looked like a man watching a bird land on a windowsill he had not known was empty. She glanced up once. He looked down at his hands. She went back to the columns. She said without looking up, Mr. Redmond, Ma'am, how long have you been buying oats from Prentice? 3 years. And how long has Prentice been charging you $1.40 a bushel? Since spring. That is a 50% increase. Is it? Yes. How do you know? Because you have 3 receipts from spring of last year at 90 cents. And I have just found 7 receipts from this fall at $1.40. And I do not know your prentice, but I know that oats have not risen 50% in this territory in the last year. Because if they had, every rancher within 100 miles would be selling calves to buy them, and we would have heard about it in Boston. Ezra did not respond. He simply looked at her. He looked at her the way a man looks at a lock that has just clicked open. She put down the receipts. Mr. Redmond, ma'am, somebody is squeezing you, and they are being careful about it, and they are being small about it, so that you do not notice. But you have been noticing, because you have been paying it, and feeling the pinch, and not knowing where the pinch is coming from. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, yes. I am going to find every place they are pinching. Yes, and I am going to write it down. Yes, and then Mr. Redmond, you and I are going to know exactly where every one of them stands. He looked at her across the table. The firelight caught the gray of his eyes. He said, Miss Lamont. Yes, I am glad you came off that train. He did not say anything else. She did not either. But something in the room shifted, something small and clean and quiet, like a hinge finely oiled. The winter came in hard the second week. Snow to the second rail of the fence. Wine that made the pines groan at night. Morning so cold the water in the pitcher froze through. Not just skinned, Anwin learned the rhythm of the house. Ezra rose at 4, fed the horses, broke the ice on the trough, came in for coffee at 5. Bowen rose at 5:30, always singing, always half a step behind the beat of the day. Jasper rose last, softly, quietly, sometimes with red eyes. Anwin did not ask. She learned that Jasper Redmond had a habit of not sleeping through the night. She learned that he read by candlelight in the kitchen at 3 in the morning. She learned that he wrote by candlelight too. She saw him one night when she had come down for a cup of water and did not know he was there. He was bent over a sheet of paper. He was writing. The candle threw a soft yellow across his fair hair. She stopped in the doorway. She did not want to intrude. He looked up. He froze. They looked at each other across the dim kitchen. His hand covered the paper. Fast. Too fast. Anwin said softly, Good evening, Jasper. Miss Lamont, I am sorry to disturb you. You did not. She stood in the doorway. She said, Is it a letter? No. A story. Not exactly. A poem. He did not answer. His hand did not move from the paper. Anwin looked at him for a long moment, at the way his hand covered the page, at the way his shoulders had gone tense, at the way he was looking at her. Not the way a man looks at a woman he wants, the way a man looks at a woman he owes something to, something he cannot yet name. She said gently, Jasper, have I done something to worry you? No, Miss Lamont. Are you sure? Yes, Miss Lamont. All right. She filled her cup. She stopped at the doorway. She turned back. She said, Jasper, ma'am, you have very careful handwriting. I noticed it the first day, when I saw the note you had left on the icebox about the eggs. His face went white. Not pink, white. He said, Miss Lamont. But she was already going, because she did not need to ask him. She had felt it the moment she stepped into the kitchen, in the way his hand covered the page. The letters, the 8 months of letters, they had not been written by Harold Blackwell, and they had not been written by a stranger she had never met. They had been written by the fair-haired young man sitting at the kitchen table in the middle of the night. She climbed the stairs to her small room. She did not lock the door. She sat on the edge of the bed. She looked at her hands. She thought, this is going to be a very complicated winter. She did not confront him for 3 days. She wanted to. She wanted to walk into the barn and take him by both shoulders and shake the truth out of him. Not out of anger, out of the need to know, out of the need to close a shape that had opened in her chest and was leaking cold air. She did not. because she was a woman who had learned patience the hard way, and because whatever this was, it was going to break something in that boy. And she did not want to break him standing up. She wanted to break him sitting down, where she could put a hand on his shoulder afterward and tell him she was not going to leave him lying there. So she waited. She kept working. The ledgers were coming into shape. She had already identified 4 vendors overcharging Ezra. She had already written to 2 of them politely, requesting an explanation. Both had written back nervously, apologetically, offering to correct the pricing going forward. She had shown the letters to Ezra. He had read them twice. He had said, "Miss Lamont, yes, you saved me $64 in 15 minutes. I saved you $64 a month, Mr. Redmond. Times 12 is 768. Miss, you are welcome." He looked at her for a long moment, and then he said something that was not a business remark. "Ellery would have liked you." Her breath caught. She did not know the name, but she knew from the way he said it whose it had been. "Ma'am," he said, correcting himself. I meant to say, was that your wife?" "Yes, ma'am." "Ellery Redmond." "Yes. It is a beautiful name." He looked down at his hands. She was a beautiful woman. Anwen did not speak. She had learned at her mother's bedside when to let a silence work. He looked up. He said, "Miss Lamont, she has been gone 6 years. I do not know why I said her name to you just now." "You said it, Mr. Redmond, because I saved you $64 a month," and she would have laughed at the look on your face. He did not laugh, but something at the corner of his mouth moved for a second, and then it stilled. She looked at him. She said quietly, "You do not have to apologize to me for saying her name in this house, Mr. Redmond." He looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. He said, "Thank you, Miss Lamont." He got up. He went to the barn. She sat at the table with the $64 in front of her. She did not cry, but her heart made a small, low sound, like a bell that has been rung and is still humming long after the striker has been withdrawn. She confronted Jasper on the 4th day. She waited until the other 2 brothers were out mending a fence on the north pasture. She waited until she had the house to herself with him. She waited until she had baked bread and made coffee and set 2 cups on the table. Then she said, "Jasper." He looked up from the book he was reading. "Ma'am, come sit." He came. He sat. She poured him a cup of coffee. She said, "You wrote those letters." He went white again. He did not answer. She said, "You wrote them for Harold Blackwell." He did not answer. She said, "You did not know what he was going to do with them." His head came up. She saw it. She saw the exact moment. His head came up and his eyes filled and his mouth trembled. She said softly, "Did you?" "No, ma'am." His voice was a whisper. "No, ma'am, I swear on my mother, I did not know." She waited. He put his hands over his face. He said, 3 years ago. "Yes." "He came to the store in town. I was in there buying paper because I like to write. I have always liked to write. My mother taught me before she died. And he saw me, and he stopped, and he said, 'Boy, you are the Redmond boy, the reading one.'" She waited. And he asked. He asked me if I would write his letters for him. Business letters at first. He said his own hand was too rough for the kind of ladies and gentlemen he corresponded with. He said he would pay me $2 a letter, $2 Miss Lamont, for a family that was already losing feed vendors. That was a lot of money. I was helping. I was helping my brothers is what I told myself. He looked up. His face was wet. And then he came back 6 months later, and he said he wanted to write to a young lady. He said he was shy. He said he was too old for such things and did not know how. He said he would tell me what to write in general, and I would put it in kinder words. He said he wanted the letters to be beautiful because she deserved beautiful letters. Anwen's hands were flat on the table. She did not move them. She could not have moved them. And the first young woman, "Ma'am, was I the first?" He looked away. He shook his head. "No, ma'am." "How many?" "Miss Lamont." "How many, Jasper?" "You are the third, ma'am." She closed her eyes. She sat very still. She thought 3 women. 3 women in 3 years. 3 women given a beautiful correspondence and then left standing on a Wyoming platform. She thought 3 scandals, 3 young men or young women who would have taken those women in. 3 stains painted onto 3 good neighbors of Harold Blackwell. She thought he has been doing this for 3 years. She opened her eyes. She looked at Jasper Redmond. She looked at his wet face and his shaking hands and his young mouth. She said, Jasper. Yes, Miss Lamont. Did you know, when you were writing to me, that he was not going to marry me? No, ma'am. Are you sure? I swear, ma'am, I swear on my brothers. He told me, each time. He told me they had changed their minds, or that their families had objected, or that circumstances had shifted. I did not know. I did not know until you stepped off that train. And Mr. Blackwell had already been married 3 weeks. And I saw your face. And I knew, ma'am, I knew then. He put his forehead against the table. He said, Miss Lamont, I have not slept a full night since you arrived. She looked at the top of his fair head. She thought about her sister in Boston. She thought about her mother on the last night reading Ruth by candlelight. She thought about how easy it would be to hate this boy. And she thought about how useless it would be. She reached across the table. She put her hand on his hair. She said, Jasper. He did not lift his head. Look at me. He lifted his head. She looked into his eyes. She said, every word you wrote to me was true. He tried to speak. She held up her other hand. Whatever he told you to say, however he told you to shape it, every word you actually wrote was written by you, in your hand, from your heart, because you cannot write a beautiful letter that is not partly your own, Jasper. I read those letters. I read them 100 times. They had a voice in them, and that voice was yours, and that voice was true. He was crying now, openly, silently. So, oh, ma'am, you are not going to carry this alone. Miss Lamont, you are not. You are going to carry it with me, because you and I are going to use everything you know, every letter you wrote, every conversation you had with him, every scrap of paper he ever gave you. We are going to use all of it, and we are going to stop him from doing this to a 4th young woman. He stared at her. He said, you are not sending me away. No, Jasper, you are not asking my brothers to send me away. No, you forgive me. She thought about the word. She thought about her mother's voice. Chin up and win. God does not close a door without opening a window somewhere. She said, there is nothing to forgive, Jasper. You did not know. And when you knew, you could not sleep. That is not a man who needs forgiveness. That is a man who is already carrying more than his share. He put his head down on the table again. He wept. She kept her hand on his hair. She thought I did not come to Wyoming to be a wife. She thought I came to Wyoming to be needed. And I was needed at Harold Blackwell's ranch if he had been an honest man. And I am needed at this table more. She kept her hand where it was until he was still. Then she got up and got him a fresh cup of coffee. That night she wrote a letter. Not to Harold Blackwell. She wrote to a woman named Hannah Vestry in Cheyenne, whose name Jasper had given her. The first of the 3 women. The first woman he had written to for Harold Blackwell. She wrote it plain. Dear Mrs. Vestry, my name is Anwin Lamont. I do not know you, but I believe you and I share a story. And I believe there are others. And I believe together we may be able to see that no other young woman has put through what we have been. If you are willing, I would be glad to correspond with you further. I write to you from the home of the Redmond family in Willow Bend, Wyoming. Yours in hope, Anwin Lamont. She sealed it. She addressed it. She set it beside her lamp. She would send it in the morning. The next week, Bowen taught her to ride. He had opinions about this. He said, Miss Lamont, a woman who cannot ride in this country is a woman who is always waiting for a man. I have been waiting for my whole life, Bowen. Well, that has clearly worked out for you. Careful. He laughed. He put her up on a small brown mare named Biscuit. He walked beside her for the first hour. She learned the rhythm of it, the give in the knees, the lift in the chest, the tiny movements of her hips that told the horse what she wanted. She was terrible for 10 minutes, and then she was less terrible. And by the end of the afternoon, she was riding a slow circle in the pasture with her hands loose on the reins and her face lifted to the pale winter sun. Bowen leaned on the fence and watched her. She reined up beside him. He said, "Miss Lamont." "Yes, you have a natural seat." "I do. Biscuit thinks so." "Biscuit is being polite." "Biscuit is never polite." Biscuit once bit Ezra's hat off his head. "Biscuit likes you." She smiled. Bowen looked up at her on the horse. The winter light caught his face. He was, she noticed for the first time, a very handsome man. Not in the smoldering way of his older brother. In another way. In an open, warm, easy way. The kind of face that was going to be the last one people forgot at a dance. He said, "Miss Lamont." "Yes, I would like to say something." "All right, but I am going to say it in a way that will not make you climb down off that horse and slap me." She laughed. "Then say it, Bowen Redmond." He said, "I have never seen my brother the way he is with you." Her smile did not go away, but something in her chest went still. "Which brother?" "Both, actually, but I meant Ezra." She did not know what to say. He said gently, "I am not asking you a question. I am just telling you. Because he will not tell you. Because he is a man who does not know how to say a thing like that anymore. He has been out of practice for 6 years, so I am telling you on his behalf. So you will not think when you catch him looking at you that he means anything unkind by it." Anwin looked down at him from the back of the horse. She said quietly, "Bowen." "Yes." "Do you know that you are a very kind man?" "I have been told yes." "Do not tell him I know." He smiled up at her. "No, ma'am." He tipped his hat. He walked back toward the barn. She sat on Biscuit for a long time in the pasture. She watched him go. She watched the mountains at the far edge. Purple, enormous. She thought about Ezra Redmond. She thought about Ezra Redmond. She thought about the way he had said Ellery would have liked you. She thought about the way he had not touched her hand once in 3 weeks. She thought about the small brass key on the dresser upstairs. Her heart moved in a way it had not moved since the platform. Not a broken way, a different way. She thought, "Do not, Anwin. Do not." She thought, "You have been fooled by one set of letters already." She thought, "Be careful." She thought, "Be very careful." She looked back toward the cabin. She saw a figure on the porch. Tall, broad shoulders, sheepskin coat, watching her ride. He did not wave. She did not wave. But something passed between them across 100 yards of winter pasture. She turned Biscuit slowly. She rode back toward the barn. She found the wooden chest in the loft on a Saturday. She had gone up to fetch a spare quilt. It was the coldest week yet. She wanted an extra blanket for Jasper, who had been sleeping poorly. She climbed the little ladder. She lifted the trap door. She stepped up into the loft. The chest was in the corner, small, cedar, a brass clasp, not locked. Not hidden, but not out. She knew it was Ellery's before she opened it. She did not know how. She just knew. She sat down in front of it. She did not open it right away. She thought, "This is not mine." She thought, "This is a private thing." She thought, a woman who has been dead 6 years does not need her chest opened by a woman who has been alive 3 weeks in her house. She thought, Anwin, "Go get the quilt. Go down the ladder." She opened the chest. She could not help it. She was not proud of it, but she opened it. Inside were 3 things: a small pair of baby shoes, a dried bunch of purple lupine flowers wrapped in a scrap of linen, and a bundle of letters tied with a faded green ribbon. Anwin stared at the letters. She thought no. She thought not letters, not another set of letters. She thought, Anwin, put them back. She lifted the top one. It was folded once, in careful sloped handwriting. "My dearest Ezra." She read the first line. If you are reading this, my love, it means I have gone on ahead. And I am so sorry, my darling. I am so sorry to leave you. Her hand went to her mouth. She read the next line. I need you to hear me now, because I will not be there to say it. Do not, Ezra. Do not close your heart up like a house nobody lives in. Do not become that, because that is not who I married. Who I married was a man who opened doors. Who I married was a man who lit fires in cold rooms. You are a keeper, my love. You keep things. You keep me. But do not keep only me. Keep someone else too, when the time comes. Her eyes were wet. She read the last line. Love again, Ezra. Love again, because that is my last prayer, and I will know wherever I am when you do. Yours until the sky comes down. Ellery. Anwen folded the letter. Her hands were shaking. She put it back in the chest, exactly the way it had been. She sat on the floor of the loft. She did not know what she was going to do with what she had just read. She only knew that a woman she had never met had 6 years ago written a letter to a man Anwen had known for 3 weeks. A woman who was dead. A woman who had prayed from her deathbed for another woman to come and open a locked-up house. And Anwen was apparently sitting in the loft of that house. She wiped her face. She closed the chest. She took the quilt she had come for. She climbed down the ladder. At the bottom she stopped, because Ezra Redmond was standing at the foot of the ladder. He was looking up at her. He had come in from the barn to fetch something. She did not know what. He was in his shirt sleeves. His face was flushed with the cold. His gray eyes were on her face. He saw the wet on her cheeks. He did not speak. He did not ask. He simply stood there. She stood on the last rung of the ladder. She said softly, Mr. Redmond. Yes, ma'am. I found something in the loft. I was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You found the chest. Yes. You opened it. Yes. And I am sorry. I did not have the right. Miss Lamont. Yes. Did you read the letter? I did. He closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, they were wet. He said, Which one? The first one, on the top. He nodded slowly. He said that was the last thing she wrote. Anwen stepped down off the ladder. She was very close to him now. She did not touch him. She said, Ezra Redmond. Yes, Miss Lamont. I am not going to tell anyone what I read. Not your brothers, not Mrs. Whitaker, not the horse in the pasture. It stays with me. Yes, ma'am. And I am going to say one more thing, and then I am going to walk into the kitchen and make supper and pretend I did not go up that ladder today. All right. She loved you very much. His face broke, not in the way faces break in penny novels. In a quieter way, a more terrible way. The way faces break when a man has been holding a thing for 6 years and did not know he was still holding it until somebody stood 2 feet in front of him and named it. His shoulders shook. He did not sob. He simply stood there. And Anwen Lamont, who had promised herself she would not touch him, who had promised herself she would be careful, put one hand on his sleeve. Just for a moment, she said softly, she loved you very much, and she wanted you to be loved again. She took her hand away. She walked into the kitchen. She started supper. And behind her, in the shadow of the ladder, Ezra Redmond stood for a long time, silent, face turned toward the wall, breathing. The next morning at breakfast, Ezra Redmond looked across the table at her. He said, Miss Lamont. Yes, Mr. Redmond. There is a bank in town. Yes. They have called in my note. She set her fork down. When? Yesterday. The letter came yesterday. I did not want to speak of it in front of Jasper. He would not sleep. How long? 90 days. She looked at him steadily. She said, Ezra. Yes. Do you have 90 days worth of money? No, ma'am. How much do you have? $22. She looked at him. She thought about Mercy Whitaker. about the 7 families, about Harrow Blackwell, about Hannah Vestry in Cheyenne, about the letter she had sent 2 days before, about Jasper's careful sloping hand, about Ellery's letter in the cedar chest, about the small brass key on the dresser upstairs. She said, "All right." That was all she said. Ezra looked at her across the table. "Ma'am, I said all right. Miss Lamont, I do not think you understand. I understand perfectly, Mr. Redmond." "Ma'am, I said all right, Ezra Redmond. Now eat your breakfast, because we have a lot of work to do." He looked at her for a long moment. Then very slowly he picked up his fork. He ate his breakfast. And outside over the Wind River Mountains, a pale winter sun rose on a woman who had 3 weeks earlier been left on a platform with $3.60 in her pocket, and who was now quietly, without knowing it herself, becoming somebody a very dangerous man was going to be very sorry he ever wrote a letter to. The Denver lawyer arrived on the 6th of March. His name was Barnaby Sterling. He came up the mountain in the Redmond wagon. He carried a leather satchel. He wore round wire spectacles that caught the pale winter sun. He was a small man, 50, iron gray at the temples, a face that had been in a lot of courtrooms and had not so far lost the light in the eyes. Anwen met him on the porch. She had put on the good dress, not for vanity, for the case, because a woman who wants to be listened to must sometimes be looked at first. Sterling stepped down from the wagon. He looked at her. He said, "Miss Lamont." "Mr. Sterling, I have read your papers twice on the train. And ma'am, I have practiced law for 22 years. I do not usually receive documentation of this quality from anyone, certainly not from a young woman with, if you will pardon me, no legal training in a school primer for a background. I had a 6th-grade primer, Mr. Sterling." He blinked, then he laughed. He laughed like a man who had not expected to laugh anywhere in Wyoming. He said, "Miss Lamont, I believe we are going to get along." They worked at the long wooden table for 4 days. Sterling, Anwen, Ezra when he came in from the barn, Bowen when he came back from town, Jasper at Anwen's left elbow. Always. Because Jasper Redmond was the memory of the case. He remembered every letter he had written for Harrow Blackwell. He remembered the exact wording Blackwell had asked him to include. He remembered a small note in the margin of one letter that read, "A. Prynne Notary. Confirm before send." That was how Anwen learned the name of Aldous Prynne. That was how Sterling learned it. That was how the whole seam of the coat came loose. Sterling looked at the note. He looked at Jasper. He said, "Young man." "Sir, do you have any idea what you have just given me?" Jasper looked at the floor. "I hope, sir. I hope I have given you enough." Sterling took off his spectacles. He rubbed his eyes. He said, "Son, you have given me the case." Sterling sat across from Anwen at the end of the 4th day. He took off his spectacles. He rubbed his eyes. He said, "Miss Lamont." "Yes. I have 3 questions." "Ask." 1. Are you willing to testify? "Yes." 2. Is Jasper Redmond willing to testify? "Yes." 3. Is Ezra Redmond willing to sit in a courtroom in Cheyenne while a lawyer for Harrow Blackwell suggests that his mail-order bride was a party to a scheme to steal his mortgage? Anwen set down her pen. She looked at Ezra. Ezra was across the room, at the fireplace. He had heard. He said without turning, "Yes, Mr. Sterling." "You are certain?" "I am." "They will make it ugly, Mr. Redmond." "They have been making it ugly for 3 years, Mr. Sterling." Sterling nodded once. He put his spectacles back on. He said, "Then we file the amended complaint on Monday." They filed on Monday. They set the trial for the 21st of March. Anwen had 2 weeks. Anwen rode into town on the 5th morning after the filing. She had not seen Mercy in 6 days, because she had been working, because Sterling had been at her elbow, because the trial was set for the 21st of March, and she had 2 weeks and a case to build and no time. She should have made time. She had told herself at least 3 mornings, go see Mercy. She had told herself at least 3 mornings tomorrow. She rode down the mountain on Biscuit. She tied the mare to the post outside the dressmaker's shop. She lifted the latch. The little bell rang. There was no answer. She said, Mercy. Silence. She said louder, Mrs. Whitaker. Silence. The shop was warm. The stove was still going. The teapot on the small back table was still warm to the touch when Anwen came to it. But Mercy Whitaker was in her rocking chair, very still, her shawl around her shoulders, her spectacles folded on her lap, her hands folded over the spectacles, her chin down, her eyes closed, a little smile at the corner of her mouth. Anwen stopped in the doorway. She said very softly, Mercy. She had never called her that, not once in 4 months. She had always called her Mrs. Whitaker, because that was proper, because Mercy was old enough to be her grandmother, because respect was the frame around every daughter thing they had built between them. But she called her Mercy now. She crossed the room slowly. She knelt beside the chair. She put her hand on the old warm hand. The hand was still warm, but the hand did not move. Anwen put her forehead down on the folded spectacles. She stayed there a long time. She did not cry. Not yet, because she had learned at 15 at her mother's bedside how to hold the crying back until she was alone. She said very quietly, Mercy Whitaker, you cannot go now. You cannot. The trial is in 16 days. You promised. You said the whole town needed to see me stand up. You said you would sit in the front row. You promised Mercy. But Mercy Whitaker was gone. She had gone the way she had lived. In her chair, in her shawl, in her shop, with the teapot on the little back table, waiting. Anwen found the letter beside the teapot, addressed to her, in Mercy's small, neat hand. Anwen, my daughter, because you have been my daughter these last months, whether either of us said it out loud. I have been sick for a long time, honey. Longer than I let on. I did not tell you because I did not want you carrying it while you were carrying the case. And I did not want you carrying it while you were building yourself back up. A young woman rebuilding herself does not need to carry an old woman's ending. I want you to know 3 things. 1, the shop is yours. I have written to my lawyer in Cheyenne. Everything I own, which is not much and is enough, is yours. Use it, honey, or sell it, or turn it into something else entirely, whatever suits you. 2, do not, my daughter, let my going stop the case. I have watched Harold Blackwell steal this valley for 3 years, and I have watched better people than me sit quiet because they were afraid. You are not afraid. Do not become afraid now. Not in the 11th hour. Not because a tired old woman got tired. 3, the Redmond man, the tall one, the one who does not yet know how to say what he means. He is a good man, Anwen. His wife was one of my dear friends. She sewed with me in this shop for 4 winters. She would want you to know that. So I am telling you, do not sit alone on any more benches, daughter. Yours until we sit together again. Mercy. Anwen folded the letter. She held it against her chest. Then she cried. Not the quiet Boston kind. The other kind. The kind that comes out of a woman when a mother she found late in life has finished her last cup of tea and closed her eyes in her chair. The brothers came for her. She did not remember sending word. She did not remember writing back. She did not remember any of it. She only remembered later. Ezra kneeling beside her, his large, careful hand between her shoulder blades. He did not speak. He simply stayed. Bowen closing the shop door. Jasper carrying Mercy's small brown teapot with the care a man uses when he is carrying a relic. Ezra putting the little closed sign in the window. Ezra saying softly, Miss Lamont, she is going to be all right where she is, and we are going to take you home. Home. He said the word. She did not correct him. They buried Mercy on the 15th of March. Half the town came. Anwen stood between Ezra and Jasper. Bowen played the violin at the graveside. Slow, sweet, a hymn Mercy had loved. The wind moved across the little cemetery. Anwen held herself still, because if she moved, she was going to break. And Mercy had asked her not to break. Not yet. 6 days later, the trial began in Cheyenne. The courtroom was smaller than she had imagined. Wooden benches, a high desk for the judge, a jury box that held 12 men, a witness stand, a gallery packed to the walls. Anwen had never been in a courtroom. She thought, this looks like a schoolhouse. Then she thought, this is going to be the schoolhouse of the rest of my life. She sat in the second row. She wore the good dress. She wore Mercy's little cameo brooch, which the lawyer in Cheyenne had delivered to her the day before, along with the deed to the shop, and the folded copy of the letter which she had read 7 times and which she now carried always in her pocket. She sat between Bowen and Jasper. Ezra sat directly behind her. She could feel him there. She did not need to turn. That was the thing about Ezra Redmond. You did not need to turn. Sterling did not raise his voice. That was the first thing she noticed. He walked to the center of the courtroom. He held a single sheet of paper. He looked at the jury. He said, "Gentlemen, I am not going to argue this case with words. I am going to argue it with numbers, and with dates, and with signatures, because that is what the case is made of." Then he began, point by point, piece by piece. Anwen watched the jury. She saw the 12 faces. She saw the exact moment the arithmetic began to land. She saw the moment the first juror sat forward. She saw the moment the second juror uncrossed his arms. She saw the moment a small farmer in the back row looked at Blackwell across the courtroom with a cold breath of something that might eventually become a verdict. Harrow Blackwell was not the man she had imagined. She had built him out of letters for 8 months. She had made him tall, and gray at the temples, and courtly. The man across the courtroom was medium height, round in the shoulders, broad in the jaw, a well-fed banker's face, a small, cold mouth, eyes that assessed her the way a man assesses livestock at a rail. He was not looking at her with hate. He was looking at her with mild curiosity. The mild curiosity of the man who had discarded her 4 months ago and now wondered briefly how she had turned up in a courtroom sitting behind a Denver lawyer. She held his gaze one long moment. She did not smile. She did not glare. She simply looked at him. Until he looked away. She thought, there. She thought, Harrow Blackwell. That was the last free look you get from me. She took the stand on the second day. She placed her hand on the Bible. She said, I do. She sat down. Sterling led her through it, slowly, with the care a man uses when he is walking a young woman across a floor covered in glass. She said the arithmetic aloud. She said the dates. She said the names. She said the phrases Jasper Redmond had 3 years earlier been asked to put into letters at Harrow Blackwell's direction. She said them plain. She did not embellish. She said yes. She said no. She said the receipts are dated the 9th and the 16th. She said the reassessment came 17 days before the note was called. She said the land company in Helena is the same company registered in Cheyenne, and the signature on both filings is A. Prin, notary. The courtroom got very quiet. Blackwell's lawyer stood. He was tall, thin, a young man with a sharp face, a paper in his hand. He said, Miss Lamont. Yes, sir. You arrived in Willow Bend as a mail-order bride. Yes. To marry my client. Yes. Who did not in fact marry you. That is correct. Would it be fair to say, Miss Lamont, that you were disappointed? That would be fair. Would it be fair to say, Miss Lamont, that you were angry? That would also be fair. Would it be fair to say, Miss Lamont, that your interpretation of my client's business dealings might in the aftermath of your disappointment be colored by feelings that are not, shall we say, strictly legal in nature? He was smiling. I was smiling because he thought he had her. He was smiling because he thought a young woman on a witness stand would flinch, or flush, or stumble. Anwen Lamont did not flinch. She looked at him. She said quietly, Sir. Ma'am. Numbers do not have feelings. The courtroom went still. They have dates and amounts and signatures. I reported what was in them. If my arithmetic is colored by disappointment, then so is the arithmetic of every honest bookkeeper who has ever balanced a ledger while carrying grief. Which, sir, is all of them? She did not smile. She did not lift her chin. She looked at him the way her mother had taught her to look at a shopkeeper who was trying to overcharge. He tried again. Miss Lamont, I am not finished, sir. Ma'am, I said I am not finished. The judge at his high desk coughed into his fist. It was Anwen thought later possibly a laugh. She said, "You have asked me if I am angry. I have told you that I am. You have asked me if my anger has colored my interpretation. I will tell you now that it has not, because I did not interpret." I added, "And subtraction and addition, sir, do not care how a woman feels." She waited. He did not answer. She said, "Do you have another question?" He did not. He sat down. She stepped off the stand. She walked back to her seat. She did not look at Ezra as she passed, but she felt him. The way a person feels a fire in a cold room without looking at it, because he was watching her walk, and she was walking upright. And that was, she thought later, the exact moment. The moment she stopped being a woman who had been left on a bench and started being a woman who had never sat down. Aldous Prynne took the stand on the fourth day. How was a small old man, balding, watery eyes behind thick spectacles. He walked to the stand like a man who had been carrying something heavy in his chest for a long time. He was sworn in. He said, "I do." He sat down. Sterling stood. He said, "Mr. Prynne, yes, you have provided sworn testimony to this court in the form of a signed affidavit. Do you affirm that testimony today in open court under oath?" "I do." "Would you tell the court, sir, in your own words, why you are testifying against your former employer?" The old man was silent a long moment. He looked at his hands. Then he looked up. He looked not at Sterling. He looked past Sterling. He looked past Anwen. He looked at Ezra Redmond. Anwen saw it. She saw it because she was in the row in front of Ezra, and the old man's eyes went right past her shoulder. The old man's face crumpled. He said, "Mr. Redmond." Ezra did not answer. The old man wiped his eyes. He said, "Mr. Redmond, I owe you an accounting." The judge said, "Mr. Prynne, please address your remarks to the court." The old man nodded, but his eyes did not leave Ezra's face. He said softly, "Your Honor, if I may, I will tell it plain, because if I do not tell it plain, I will not tell it at all." The judge said, "Proceed." He began, his voice small, but the courtroom carrying it. "I have been a notary in this territory for 31 years. I stamped Harold Blackwell's papers because he paid me. And I told myself for many years that a notary does not read what he stamps. He only stamps." He paused. "That was a lie. I paid for it." He paused again. "I want to tell the court now, and I want to tell Mr. Redmond, who is in this room, something I have been carrying for many years." He looked at Ezra. He said, "Mr. Redmond, your wife, Ellery Redmond." The courtroom held its breath. Anwen felt Ezra go still behind her. "I knew her, Mr. Redmond. I knew her when she was a girl, before she was your wife. I was a young man in Cheyenne. She was a young woman with her father, waiting on the mail, one afternoon." His voice was almost a whisper now, but every ear in the courtroom was leaning forward. "I loved her, Mr. Redmond, from that afternoon, for the rest of my life." Anwen's hand went to her mouth. The old man said, "I never told her, Mr. Redmond. I never said a word, because I knew, and everybody knew, that her heart was going to be given to the tall young man from the mountain. And it was. And she gave it. And she was happy. And I was the notary in Cheyenne, who saw her at the store sometimes, and tipped my hat, and went on." His voice broke. "And when she died, 6 years ago, I read it in the paper, and I sat in my little office, and I wept, because a woman I had loved from a distance for 20 years was gone, and I did not have the right to grieve her. because I had never loved her out loud. He was crying openly now. The whole courtroom was quiet. And a year later, Harold Blackwell came to my office, and he offered me a great deal of money to stamp certain papers. And I did, because I did not care anymore, because I had loved a woman for 20 years without ever saying it, and I had lost her. And I thought, what does it matter now? What does anything matter now? He paused. He looked at Ezra. But it did matter, Mr. Redmond, because those papers were used to take land from your family, from the family of the woman I loved, from the man she chose. And I signed the papers, and I stamped them, and I told myself I was not the one doing the harm. I was only the notary. He put his hand over his heart. That was the biggest lie of my life, and I have carried it for 6 years, and I do not want to carry it another day. He turned toward the judge. Your Honor, I am testifying today because I could not save Ellery Redmond. I could not save her from the fever. I could not save her from the winter. But I can today save her husband and her family from the man who has been trying to take everything she loved. His voice cracked. That is why I am here. That is the whole truth. The courtroom did not move. Anwin did not turn around, but she reached one hand back over the low wooden rail. She did not know if Ezra would take it. She simply reached. She felt his large, warm hand close over hers, firm, steady, for one long moment. Then he let go. She did not look back, but she felt the shape of it settle in her chest. The shape of a man who had in one afternoon finally been given the whole story of the woman he lost, and who had in the same afternoon chosen to hold the hand of the woman he had, without saying it, yet begun to find. The verdict came on the 5th day. Harold Blackwell was found guilty on 7 counts: fraud, criminal conspiracy, fraudulent notarization by proxy, obstruction, 2 counts of coercion against the affected families, 1 count of using the postal service in furtherance of fraud. The judge ordered restitution. Every family that had lost land in the past 3 years would have it returned. The mortgages against them would be dissolved. The Redmond note would be reinstated on its original terms. The costs of the trial would come out of Blackwell's own assets. The gavel fell. Anwin did not cheer. Nobody did. That was, she thought later, the strange part. The courtroom was very quiet because they had won. But nobody who had lived through the last 3 years in Willow Bend was going to whoop and holler about a verdict in a courtroom. They were going to walk out. They were going to breathe. They were going to go home. She walked out into the afternoon light. Ezra walked beside her. Bowen and Jasper walked behind. Barnaby Sterling stopped them on the courthouse steps. He tipped his hat. He said, Miss Lamont. Mr. Sterling, I have been asked by 2 other law firms in this territory to inquire whether you would consider consulting on similar cases in the future. Anwin blinked. Mr. Sterling. Yes. I have never studied law. I am aware. I have never opened a law book. I am aware. Then why? Because, Miss Lamont, they can teach a person the law. They cannot teach a person the ledger. They cannot teach a person the arithmetic. And they cannot apparently teach a person how to turn to a lawyer who is trying to break her on a witness stand and, without raising her voice, take him apart at the joints. She looked at him. She said, Mr. Sterling. Yes, I will think about it. He nodded. He tipped his hat. He walked away. Ezra Redmond, standing beside her, said nothing. But when they climbed into the wagon, he adjusted the blanket over her lap without being asked. That was, she thought, its own kind of answer. They rode back to Willow Bend. The road was long. The light was low. The mountains at the edge of the plain were purple in the afternoon. Anwin sat between Ezra and Bowen. Jasper in the back with the trunks. She thought, I am going home. She thought, that is the first time I have thought that word about any place in 7 years. Jasper came to her in the kitchen 4 days later. He was carrying a knapsack. She looked at him. She said, Jasper Redmond. Miss Lamont, where do you think you are going? Ma'am, I have been thinking. About what to do next. And? He looked at his boots. He said, "There is a magazine in Denver. It publishes stories, and I want to try to write. Not letters, ma'am. Not letters for other men." He lifted his head. "Stories, my own." Enwyn set down the flour sifter. She looked at him a long moment. She said, "Jasper." "Yes, ma'am." "Do you know what I want you to do?" "Ma'am, I want you to go to Denver. I want you to write. I want you to send me every story, every single one, and I will read them at this table, and I will write you back. And when your first story is printed, Jasper Redmond, we are going to frame it and put it in the front room, where every guest of this house will see it. Do you understand me?" His eyes filled. He said, "Miss Lamont." "Yes. You are the reason I get to go." "No, Jasper." "Ma'am, you are the reason you get to go. I only opened a door. You are the one walking through it." He put the knapsack down. He came around the table. He hugged her. Once. Quick. The way a brother hugs a sister who has finally believed him. He picked up the knapsack. He went to find Ezra to say goodbye. She saw Bowen at the fence that afternoon. He was watching the calves. She came up beside him. He said, "Miss Lamont." "Bowen, you are looking at me the way a woman looks at a man when she is about to say something." "I am." "All right." She was quiet a moment. She said, "Bowen Redmond." "Yes, Miss Lamont." "You knew before I did." "I did." "You knew from the first week." "I knew from the first evening." "Bowen." "Miss Lamont." She stopped. He said, "You do not owe me a speech. You do not owe me a soft letting down. You do not owe me a delicate explanation. I am not a boy at his first dance. I am a grown man who has a very handsome older brother who has been in love with you since the second week of December, and I am not Miss Lamont in the habit of trying to steal from my brothers." He smiled, a real one. He said, "I would like, however, yes, to ask you a favor. Anything. When you marry him, because you will, even if he does not yet know it, even if you do not yet know it, when you marry him, will you let me be the one to play the fiddle at the wedding?" Her eyes filled. She said, "Bowen Redmond." "Yes, ma'am. You will play the fiddle at every wedding in this family for the rest of your life." He laughed. He tipped his hat. He said, "Yes, ma'am." He looked back at the calves. He said without looking at her, "Also, yes. If I could ask another favor." "Yes. Do not stop calling me your brother." "Bowen, that is what I would like most." She put her hand on his sleeve. She said, "Brother." He did not turn, but his shoulders eased. He said, "Thank you, sister." The lupine came up in early May. She had been watching the south side of the house because Ellery Redmond had 6 years earlier planted a bed of purple lupine there, because Ezra had 6 years earlier meant to pull them and had not. Anwen had in November cleared the winter debris from around the chutes. She had checked every day of March whether they were pushing up through the softened ground. They came up on a Tuesday, small, green, curled tight, not blooming yet, just alive. She stood over them. She said softly, "There you are." The blooms opened on a Sunday. Purple, deep, full, a whole bed of them along the south wall of the house, the way a bed of lupine is meant to be when a good woman planted it and the earth remembered. Anwen was in the kitchen when Ezra came in. He said, "Miss Lamont." "Yes, Mr. Redmond." "Would you come outside?" "Now, if you would." She wiped her hands on her apron. She followed him. He walked her around the side of the house. He stopped in front of the lupine. He was quiet a moment. Then he said, "Miss Lamont." "Yes? Do you know what these are?" "They are lupine. They are Ellery's lupine." "I know. She planted them a year before she died." "I know. I have not been able to look at them, Miss Lamont, in 6 years." She said nothing. He said, "I looked at them yesterday." She turned her face slowly toward him. He was looking at the flowers. He said, "I looked at them yesterday, and I did not want to pull them, and I did not want to walk away from them, and I stood in front of them for a long time. And I thought about a woman who wrote me a letter before she died, and I thought about a woman who read that letter 6 years later in a loft, and put it back in the chest, and did not tell my brothers, and walked into the kitchen and made supper. He turned his face toward her. His gray eyes were full. He said, Miss Lamont, yes, I do not know how to do this well. Do what? This. She waited. He said, I have not done this in a very long time. And the first time I did it, I was 26. And it was easy, because I did not know what it was to lose it. I know now. She waited. He said, Anwin, her name. He had not in 6 months said her Christian name. She felt her chin lift. She felt her chest open. She felt something inside her, some quiet, stubborn, hopeful animal. Sit up and pay attention. He said, Anwin Lamont. Yes. Would you consider marrying me? She was quiet a long moment. She thought, oh, mother, there is the window. She thought, there is the window you told me about. She thought I did not know it would look like a bed of purple lupine on the south wall of a mountain house. She thought, but God is not apparently in the habit of being obvious. She said, Ezra Redmond. Yes. When? He blinked. Ma'am, when would you like to marry me? You mean you? I mean, yes, Ezra, but not without a when. He laughed. It was the first time she had heard him laugh in 6 months. It came out of his chest like a bell that had been waiting to ring. He said, as soon as you would like. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. With Bowen playing the violin, and Jasper coming home from Denver, and my sister on the train from Boston, and the lupine still in bloom. Yes. And it will be small. Yes. And it will be here, in this yard. Yes. Under the sky. Yes. She reached up. She put her hand on his cheek. The first time she had touched him with intention. He closed his eyes. She said, Ezra. Yes. Ellery was right about you. He opened his eyes. They were wet. He said, Anwin. Yes. So was your mother. She had told him in November about the window, about the door closing and the window opening, about her mother's voice in the biscuit dough. He had remembered. She said, kiss me, Ezra Redmond. He did. Not the way a man kisses a woman on a courthouse step. The way a man kisses a woman he has been waiting to kiss for 6 years and did not until this Sunday know it. Once, careful, certain. Then he stepped back. He said, Anwin, yes, I would like to say a prayer of thanks in the parlor before supper. I would like that too. I would also like, yes, to lift you off your feet and swing you around this yard. Then do it, Ezra Redmond. He did, and the lupine watched, and somewhere so did Ellery, and so Anwin thought did her own mother, and so did Mercy. They were married on the 18th of May. Bowen played the fiddle. Jasper came home from Denver. He wore a new coat. He carried a folded paper in his pocket. He told her at the kitchen table, been accepted by a Denver monthly. His first story would be printed in July. Anwin cried when he told her. Not much, just enough. She hugged him. She said, framed front room, I told you. He laughed. Piety Lamont, age 10, came off the eastbound stagecoach at Willow Bend Station on the morning of the wedding, in a small brown dress, with a little carpet bag, with a nervous smile. Anwin had been waiting on the platform since 7 o'clock. The stage came in at 8. Piety climbed down. She saw her sister. She dropped the carpet bag. She ran. Anwin caught her. They stood on the platform of Willow Bend Station, in the exact place where 6 months earlier, a young woman with $3.60 had been erased. Anwin was not erased anymore. Anwin was found. Anwin held her little sister in the Wyoming sun. Piety said into her collar, you are wearing a new dress. I am. It is white. It is. Anwin. Yes, honey. Are you getting married? Yes, honey. Today, today. Piety pulled back, her small face solemn. She said to a nice man, with a big house, with a big house, with a bed for me. Anwin's throat closed. She said, with a bed for you, with a window that faces the mountain. Piety Lamont, aged 10, looked up at her older sister with the kind of unshielded belief that only a child can hold in her small, careful hands. She said, then let us go, Anwin. The wedding was in the yard, under a Wyoming sky that had no word, beside a bed of purple lupine that a good woman had planted years before. The whole town came. Aldous Prynne came. He wore a black suit. He sat in the back. He wept quietly through the vows. Afterward, he came up. He pressed Anwin's hand. He said, God bless you, Miss Lamont. It is Mrs. Redmond now, Mr. Prynne. He wept harder. She said, God bless you, Mr. Prynne. She meant it. She let him weep. The vows were plain. That was what Anwin had wanted. Plain. Ezra said them. She said them. The pastor from the little church in town said the words. He kept them short. He knew his audience. When the pastor said, you may kiss your bride, Ezra Redmond did, once. Careful, certain. The way a man kisses a woman he has at long last been given. The town clapped. Bowen played a jig. Piety danced with everybody at least once. Jasper stood at the edge of the yard with a folded sheet of paper. At the moment when the sun was low enough to turn the lupine to indigo, he stepped forward. He said, I would like to read something, if Anwin will let me. She nodded. He unfolded the paper. He read from the book of Ruth. Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest I will go, and where thou lodgest I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. He looked up. He looked at Anwin. He said, that was my mother's favorite passage. It was my mother's too. I know. The two of them stood in the yard for a long moment. Then Bowen started to play again, softly. The tune Anwin had heard him play on her first night in the house. The slow one, the one with the heart in it. They cut the cake at sunset. Ezra Redmond stood beside his wife on the porch of the house he had built with his brothers. He did not once look at her the way a man looks at a woman he is afraid he will lose. He looked at her the way a man looks at a woman he has finally at long last been able to keep. She opened the shop in June. She had a new sign painted. Whitaker and Redmond, fine sewing, alterations, bookkeeping, correspondence, consultation on legal documents. She kept Mercy's little brown teapot on a shelf behind the counter. She hired a young widow from the North Road to help with the sewing. Piety helped after school. She learned to hem. She learned to add. She was very good at both. Anwin watched her and thought, you are 10 years old, and you already know the arithmetic of a woman's life. She thought, you are going to be all right, Piety. Barnaby Sterling sent her 3 cases in the first month. By September, she had 5 clients across the territory. By November, she had 8. She wrote back to every one of them. She kept a ledger of them. At the top of the ledger in her careful hand, she had written the words Mercy had left her. Do not sit alone on any more benches, daughter. The letter from Cheyenne came on a Tuesday in July. Dear Miss Lamont, my name is Hannah Vestry. Anwin stopped because she had written to Hannah Vestry in December, and Hannah Vestry had never written back. I am sorry it has taken me this long. I have read your letter every week for 7 months. I could not answer it. I could not put pen to paper. Because you knew Miss Lamont. You knew what happened to me. And I did not know until your letter that it had happened to anybody else. I read in the Cheyenne paper that you have won your case. And I read that a shop has opened in Willow Bend. And I wanted to write at last to say, Miss Lamont, thank you. Thank you for standing up. I do not know if I will ever come to Willow Bend, but I know now that I am not alone, and that Miss Lamont is the largest gift I have been given in 3 years. Yours in gratitude, Hannah Vestry. Anwen read it twice. She put it in the drawer with Mercy's letter. She sat very still. She thought, this is not the end. She thought this is what Mercy meant. She walked down to the station the next Tuesday. She had, without thinking about it, begun to do this every Tuesday. It had begun as an errand. It had become a habit. It had become, she was beginning to understand, a small, quiet appointment with something she had promised the woman she used to be. She sat on the bench, her bench. The town had, without discussion, started calling it that. She sat there for many Tuesdays. Sometimes she brought her mending. Sometimes she brought a book. Sometimes she just sat. Nothing happened most Tuesdays. Trains came. Trains went. Farmers with sacks of feed. Businessmen from Denver with leather cases. Women meeting husbands. Grandmothers meeting grandchildren. She watched. She waited. She did not know for what. Until one afternoon in July, she did. The 4 o'clock train pulled in. The whistle cut the air. Sharp. Final. The passengers came off. A boy with a school book. Two farmers. A traveling preacher. A woman with a hat box. And, and, a young woman. Small. Alone. 20. Maybe 21. A little wooden trunk at her feet. A pale dress. A gray shawl. A face that had not slept in 3 days. She sat down on the bench, 2 feet from Anwen. She did not look up. She was crying, softly. The way a woman cries when she has not eaten and does not know where she is going and does not want anyone to notice. Anwen watched her. She thought, there you are. She thought, I have been waiting for you. She reached into her pocket. She took out a clean handkerchief. Linen. Embroidered in the corner with a small letter A. She held it out. She did not speak. The young woman looked at the handkerchief. Then she looked at Anwen. Anwen said softly, take it, honey. The young woman took it. She pressed it against her face. Anwen waited. When the young woman lowered the handkerchief, Anwen said, what is your name? Faye. Faye. Faye Ambrister. Faye Ambrister. Where were you going? There was a man. I know. The young woman looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. Her mouth trembled. She said, you know. I know, honey. He said he would meet me. He said, Faye. Yes. Come with me. Ma'am, come with me. I know a shop in this town, and I know a house in the mountains, and I know 2 good men there. Well, 3 when the youngest is home, because right now he is in Denver getting his 2nd story printed. I don't. Faye, look at me. The young woman looked. Anwen said, you are not going to sit on this bench tonight, not for 1 more minute, because I sat on this bench once, and I will tell you the whole story later if you would like to hear it. But right now, I would like you to pick up your trunk and walk with me and meet a woman I used to be and a woman I am now, and figure out over a cup of tea which one of them you feel most like today. She stood up. She held out her hand, not to take, just to offer. Faye Ambrister looked at the hand. She looked at the woman. She looked at the mountains at the end of the road. She lifted her face slowly. She put her small hand into Anwen's. She stood up. Anwen picked up the trunk. They walked together off the platform of Willow Bend Station. The wagon was waiting outside the station. Ezra Redmond was in the driver's seat. He had, without being asked, driven down that Tuesday. Because he knew. Because he had learned to read his wife. Because his wife went to the station every Tuesday. And on the Tuesdays, she did not need him. She came home alone. And on the Tuesdays, she did. He was there. He saw the 2 women coming. He climbed down. He did not ask. He simply took the trunk from Anwen's hand. He tipped his hat to Faye. He said, ma'am, welcome to Wyoming. Faye Ambrister stared at him. She had, Anwen thought, expected almost anything else. She had not expected a big, broad-shouldered mountain man in a sheepskin coat taking her trunk from a shop owner's hand and saying, "Welcome to Wyoming." Faye's chin trembled. She said, "Sir." "Yes, ma'am. I, I don't, ma'am. My wife would like you to have supper at our table tonight, in a spare room if you would like it. The door has a lock. My wife will show you how it works." Faye Ambrister looked at Anwin. Anwin nodded. The wagon climbed the mountain. Faye sat between them. She did not speak for the first mile. Then she said, "Mrs. Redmond." "Yes, honey. You did this." "Did what?" You did all of this yourself. You were on that bench once, and now you." "Faye." "Yes. Not by myself, honey." Faye looked at Ezra. Ezra kept his eyes on the road. Anwin said, "There was a woman named Mercy who saw me first, and who is not with us anymore, but who taught me how to see. So when I see you, honey, I am partly seeing you with her eyes." She paused. "And there was a man named Ezra who is with us, and who put a coat on my shoulders in the snow one afternoon when he had no reason to." She paused. "And there were two brothers, Bowen and Jasper, who are also part of the story, and you will meet them, Bowen tonight, Jasper when he comes home in September." She turned to look at Faye. "So no, honey, I did not do this by myself. Nobody does anything by themselves. That is one of the first things I want you to learn if you are going to stay in Willow Bend." Faye Ambrister cried into the handkerchief again, softly. Not the desperate kind of crying she had been doing on the bench. The other kind. The kind that comes out of a woman when she realizes for the first time in a long time that she has arrived somewhere with a roof. The house at the top of the mountain glowed in the July dusk. Bowen was on the porch. He had lit the lamps. He had put out 3 chairs. He had, Anwin noticed, put a small vase of purple lupine on the porch rail. He tipped his hat as the wagon came up. He said, "Ma'am, welcome home." He said it to Faye, not to Anwin. Faye looked at him. She looked at Anwin. She looked at Ezra. She looked at the mountains. She looked at the lupine on the porch rail. She said softly, "Home." Anwin said, "Home, honey, for as long as you need it. And when you don't need it anymore, you go. And when you go, you take Mercy's teapot with you if you like. Or a sewing kit. Or my recipe for biscuits. Or all 3. Because the point is not that you stay, Faye. The point is that you land." Faye's face crumpled. She whispered, "How did you know?" "Know what, honey?" That you needed to land." "Yes." Anwin smiled, small, certain. She said, "Because I used to be you, Faye Ambrister." That night after supper, Anwin stood in the yard. The stars were out. The Wyoming sky was full of them. More stars than Boston had ever shown her. Ezra came out. He put his coat around her shoulders. He did not speak. He did not have to. She said quietly, "Ezra." "Yes, wife." "There is going to be another one." "Another one." "Another young woman. On the bench. Not tonight. Not next Tuesday. But eventually." "Yes." "And another after her." "Yes." "And another." "Yes, Anwin." She turned toward him. "Ezra." "Yes. I want us to keep bringing them home. As long as we can. As long as the mountain will hold us." He looked down at her. He said, "Anwin Redmond." "Yes. That is what I hoped you would say." She smiled. He put his arm around her shoulders. They stood in the yard. The lupine had at last begun to fade for the season, but the bed was there, and it would come up again in May, and every May after, for as long as the mountain would hold them. Somewhere behind them, in the warm-lit kitchen, a young woman named Faye Ambrister was drinking her first cup of tea in a Wyoming house. Somewhere in Denver, a young man named Jasper Redmond was writing a story about a girl on a bench. Somewhere in Boston, a 9-year-old had become a 10-year-old and was now upstairs in a room with a window that faced the mountain. Somewhere across the little cemetery in Willow Bend, a woman named Mercy Whitaker slept. Somewhere across a longer cemetery in Boston, Another woman slept. And somewhere in a place none of the living could name a woman named Ellery Redmond who had once prayed from her deathbed that her husband would love again. Was Anwin thought quietly at peace? Because sometimes, the trains we think are taking us to our last stop are only taking us home. And the benches we think we will die on are only waiting rooms where the next woman is coming to sit